Today on the show, where have all the young people gone, how to find them, and what to do to get them back into the pews. The Catholic Underground starts right now. That's right. You have hit the play button on the Catholic Underground, a podcast cutting through the noise and bringing you the topics that matter. This is episode number 447 for those of you who are still keeping some kind of count track. And no, I am not Father Chris Decker. I am Kathleen Lee. Father Chris is on assignment, entertaining some priests from out of town. And so he has left it to our capable hands, let's say.
But I thought you're still wearing black.
I know. Well, I usually do wear black. I don't wear a lot of colors, but tonight we have, sitting in with us, we have, of course, Olivia Gulino, teacher extraordinaire, Kevin extraordinaire.
Thank you.
You're so
sweet.
So glad to have you back.
I'm happy to be back. I know, I was gone for a couple weeks.
I know. Don't ever do that again.
So sorry.
For our third spot, we have Tyler Trahan, director of the Franciscan Experience at Fran U here in Baton Rouge. Good to have you.
Always good to be here.
Tyler is usually sitting in for me, so it's good to have to be
That's
with
true.
you.
Yeah, that is true.
Look at us.
Together
at last.
Man.
Yes, and so then, of course, up on the Jeff Star 1, we have the one, the only Commander-in-Chief, Jeff Blackwell. How are you doing?
The man.
I am still baptized, Kathleen.
Yes, indeed. Do you have enough snacks up there? You have enough snacks?
We're good. In fact, I have some beaver nuggets from.
Those are so good.
Yeah, from Buc-ee's.
Yes, sir.
I'm good to go.
Yes, indeed. And of course, switching all the video, you've never seen him, but he's there. Ed Ball is in the ball pit. I expect him to answer, but he can't. I know. So
we should I don't know, for a fundraiser or something, auction off a picture of Ed or something.
Yeah.
Oh,
you know what he reminds me of? That guy who is on what was that, Home Improvement? And the neighbor who's always behind the fence. You never
that is
see his
literally
face.
the second time today that I have needed to come up with that exact person's name. His name is Wilson. I don't know why I know that and why it is so readily on my mind, but there we go.
Well, there it is.
Today's the day for that information.
Speaking of that information, you would know that if you were of, I believe, our generation. And we were talking about what are some things that, that we might want to talk about together while we have the three of us here. And we all have some experience with youth and young adult ministry. And so there's been this rise in what they're calling the quote unquote the nuns, right? And at first, somebody was talking about this and I was like, there's a lot of religious what's going on, right? Now the nuns, Brandon Vaught, we've talked about him many, many times. He has a really cool article on using some stats talking about the nuns. Now we talk about nuns being NONES, and these are young adults, right, or people who don't identify with any specific religion. And so we thought we'd talk about that in terms of young adults. And why there is this big disconnect from what I always thought was high school, right? Yeah. When people left high school and went into college, and when they wanted to come back and get either married or baptize their own children into the church. But what I'm finding, especially in teaching junior high kids, is that it starts way before, way before. And so we thought we'd spend some time talking about who are these people, where have they gone, and how do we get them back, as active members of the church? Now, Brendan has, in his article, he cites the Public Religion Research Institute, a 2016, study? Yeah, the survey. For young adults between the ages of 18 and 29. Now, when I did young adult ministry, it was 18 to 40. But we're going to go ahead for the purpose of tonight's conversation because everybody's young at heart. For the purpose of tonight's conversation, we're going to talk about between 18 and 29. So people who are in their 20s and 30s. And so he lays it out because there are some really interesting stats on who these people are, why they're leaving, where are they going, and these kinds of things. And so, if you are a young adult this episode is for you. If you are not a young adult, this episode is for you.
Absolutely.
Because I believe that, and now I'm going to go a little bit off the rails for a minute, but I believe, and we can maybe kind of throw this around, that I think too many times we try to, within the church, section off specific ministries, specific groups of people, and be like, okay, well, this is, when I was working with young adults, I had so many people that were like, well, young adults are really college and 20s. And then the older young adults were like, young adults are really people with babies and families. And I was like, okay, wait.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so I don't know, like, what do you think when we talk about, one of my questions is, when do you stop becoming a young adult?
I mean, I think it's tricky because, I had this difficulty when I worked for the diocese, like trying to plan young adult events and things.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because, you want to plan something that people actually want to go to and that's actually going to meet people's needs and things.
Right.
But you do have a lot of like demographics and stuff to meet, but then you run the risk of like being super specific.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And also just realizing that like, when you get down to it, like someone who is single and 25 can hang out with someone who is married and 35 with 3 kids.
Right.
And they can be friends and get, like, one of my really good friends is in her 40s and has 4 kids. Right. And like, we have plenty to talk about, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so I think that it should be, not always is, but it should be less about like the demographic issues and more about like the interests,
Yeah.
But it ends up being like, I kind of like laugh to myself, like when I go into a church and I look in the bulletin and it's like, all right, well, the meeting for like this Bible study that's for like young single women 18 to 22.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, come on.
Yeah.
Let's get real.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's I think there's a kind of a movement right now, a very slow movement, I might add, on that integrative approach to evangelization, where it's not so much about the 18 to 29 and this is what this particular, like, yes, there may be some very like niches that would meet that particular demographic based off of maybe their life experiences, what they're going through, but even still, there's that opportunity where I've been seeing a lot of conversation happening in the church where it's the intergenerational modes of evangelization, where it's like perfect example, a marriage prep, like you have an engaged couple that will get matched with an older couple that can kind of be a mentor to them, and but then I'm also thinking about events that you guys kind of brought back whenever you were working in the diocese, Theology on Tap, which is a big young adult movement across the country, where that's kind of a like you could be 50 years old and attend a Theology on Tap, especially if it's something that is relative to maybe where you are in your faith at that particular point. Yeah. And I mean, it's theology, so anyone can learn theology no matter where you are.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering too if we don't like try to cater so much that people we lose the encounter with just the church.
Well, and like, this is gonna be a terrible analogy, but like, so I listen to like lots of, kind of esoteric music, but anyway, some of like the best concerts I've ever been to have not been the ones that have like tons of people who like look like me and are like my age in the crowd. Some of the best concerts I've ever been to were concerts where like the people in the crowd were like in their 40s, and it's not because like the band necessarily is like, I don't know, the Eagles or whatever, but it's just because it's like, maybe they just happened to like find this band or something, like, and they just got into it, or like for whatever reason, this is, why they decided to be there tonight, whatever. And it ends up being just a very like calm, cool, chill experience for everyone. Right. And like, I think that that's something where like, if I wasn't open to that because I'm like, well, this isn't my scene. This is uncool. Right. None of these people have anything to relate to me about. Well, then it might be something that I'd choose to be isolated about. But if we don't look at other people as like that, right? Like an opportunity to, be isolated from, or look at people purely demographically, which I think we can tend to do, especially in ministry, because we're so like used to our studies and stuff. Then we might lose sight of the person and the opportunity for like true encounter, which is really the whole point. Right. And especially for those people that are, I mean, like for me, I mean,
to be transparent, like I'm 30 years old. I'm about to turn 31 in less than a month. Like I'm approaching kind of that blurred line between who considers me a young adult. You know, I'm single, not dating, you know, but, you know, discerning marriage. But like, so even like opportunities for me to grow in my faith, which is labeled for young adults.
Right.
Wait, so am I actually welcome now? Because do they still consider me a young adult? And so I think to Olivia's point, you know, there could be opportunities where it's not so much about demographic as it is as much interest. You know, like what are some particular themes of the faith that really interest you? And whenever the opportunity comes up, and then also, you know, just kind of where you are in your vocational state, right? You know, so there can be opportunities to maybe cater more to a vocational state maybe than to demographic. Yeah. So before we get into some more conversation about, you know, about what this looks like, let's get some cold hard numbers out of this pew, because it's very interesting. Now we can look at some of these numbers and be very disheartened, and it is, you know, when we look at them, they're not fun numbers, but there's always hope, and we'll talk about that, you know, by the end of the show. So don't despair. Just know, right, that if we need to look at these numbers and to see the reality. You know, I'm a big believer in, you know, if you have, you know, if you have some kind of disease, it's better to say, well, I got a disease, let's look at it, than to say, but there's no disease here. And then you end up in all kinds of trouble. So who are the former Catholics and the nuns, right? 10% of American adults are now former Catholics. And so when Catholics leave the church, they become, you know, a myriad of different things. But 49% of those who leave the church become, you know, nuns or the unaffiliated or no religion. So that's almost half of those who leave the church don't affiliate with any other kind of religion. It's not like they're leaving to convert to some other Christian denomination. So 25% of Americans today identify as the nun, and now it's the largest religious group in America, which is interesting.
That's crazy.
And interestingly enough, 21% of the nuns were raised unaffiliated, so they were unaffiliated and are still unaffiliated, while 28% were raised Catholics and are now unaffiliated.
And I find that fascinating that it's specifically we're raised Catholic, not just like we're raised Christian or something. Like we're raised, or like even monotheist, like we're raised Catholic.
Right.
That's crazy.
Yeah. 39% of young adults, so those between the ages of 18 and 29, are nun. That's more than 3 times the rate of nun seniors who are 65 and older. And today's young adults are 4 times more likely to be nun than young adults in the previous generation. 4 times, right? And they just, you know, I don't know, like, you know, that's really interesting to me. And we'll talk about, you know, why some of these people, you know, choose that. But 4 times, that's a lot. That is a lot. Now, we talk. There are 3 types of nuns that they talk about, which is this I thought was really interesting, because it talks about, you know, it's just not that they throw their hands up with religion, but there are 58% of them are what is known as rejectionists, and that religion is not personally important, and religion actually does more harm than good in their thought process. 22%, I'm gonna get this so wrong, apatheists. So they're apathetic, right? Religion is not personally important, right? But it's generally helpful in society. That's what they believe, right? It's not important to me personally, but it's helpful to society to have some kind of religious belief. And then you have 18% who are considered unattached believers. That religion is not religion is personally important, and it's generally helpful to society. So they believe in something. And it's helpful to society. And so these are kind of the 3 main types of what we're considering nuns today. Now, there's also a lot of reasons why they're leaving. We're gonna get to that in a minute, but when are they leaving is what I think is important to talk about, because like I said at the beginning of the show, I always thought that, you know, young adults were going to find themselves. And what I'm finding, and I think we all have experience in this as well, is that they're leaving way before that. And we were talking about before the show, you know, my personal believe is that I would love to see what moving confirmation back to 8th grade would do, because I think that by junior year, we have lost a lot of young people.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that kind of tripped me over whenever I was thinking of these statistics is, logically, I guess in my mind, it's thinking about the transition from high school to college. Like, that's where young people experience the most change, maybe moving out of their families, a whole different dynamic and everything. That is where the nun generation, that's where you would see the most fallout. But it's so interesting how that with no climate, no, that's the wrong word to say, but there's no dramatic changes going on in their life that would prompt them to make this dramatic change. So it's just very interesting to me.
And I mean, looking too at like, because essentially what we're talking about is like restoring like something closer to like the order, the traditional order of the sacraments, like and the ages at which that would happen. And really, like, the 3rd grade would be like when someone like in the restored order of the sacraments would like receive confirmation. And like the reality is like it's about the grace of confirmation, like and it's like it's not just about like receiving like the education and like the catechesis, and that's all good, hopefully, but it's also just about like the grace that is strengthened and is, sealed in that sacrament, and that is perpetuated by the Eucharist, and then reconciled by confession, things like that, so that the communion that we are being drawn into in the sacraments of initiation, which confirmation is the final one, that communion bond is being solidified at such a young age, and that it solidifies you as a member of the church militant and makes you a warrior for Christ, and that's such a pivotal identity for a child, and for a person. And so but that grace, coming back to my point, that grace is so important, and I think that you're right, to wait until a child is in their teenage years, past the point when they're already, because what's the median age of disaffiliation is like 13, right? Past the point when we're basically saying I might be made to go to church, or I might be made to go to different things, but mentally, intellectually, I've said sayonara. And grace is real. We either believe that or we don't, right? And we need that grace ourselves, and we need that for our kids.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And my experience with 6th and 8th graders now, I'm looking at them, and you're right, they have already that is the age. They're around 13 years old, and some of them are like, okay. And there are many reasons why, and we could talk about those till we're blue in the face, right? And we will a little bit, but while we have you, we'd like to remind you that you are listening to the Catholic Underground. I'm gonna get better at transitions.
You're doing fabulous.
Yeah, it's
I'm
great.
Transition time.
I love it.
Jeff, thank you so much. You are listening to the Catholic Underground. We're so glad that you have found us today. I am your host tonight, Kathleen Lee. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Joined by Tyler Trahan.
Yes.
South
Louisiana.
You just gotta lose all the consonants.
Yeah.
I know, and I ruined it because I've known Tyler for years, and in my mind I say Tyler Trahan.
And so does everyone else.
And then I heard from Chris here the other night, and I was like, oh, I've been lied to.
I just literally made Tyler sit down one time and just be like, all right, teach me. Teach me your ways.
It's a whole muscle thing.
Tyler's here. Kevin is here. Olivia.
What's up?
Jeff is up in the Jeff Star one. Ed's Edding in the ball pit. He's doing his thing. Father Chris is on assignment, but we are super glad that you are here with us, because we're talking about a very interesting topic that I think, and one very near and dear to our hearts, and that is of young adults, the young church, right? And so, we were looking at some stats, which are really important to look at, and this is one that is super interesting to me. We're talking about, when do young people leave or disenfranchise themselves, or, you know, just get kind of, I would say, like bored with the idea of religion and church. And it says that 90% of American nuns, right? And when we say nuns, N-O-N-E-S, who left religion did so before the age of 29. So they did so in their young adult years, 90% of them. Yeah. Now they broke down that 90%, right? 62% of those who left in their young adult years left before they were even considered young adults, left before they were 18, right? And so my question is, what, like, what, like, you know, we've talked about our experience in youth ministry and how that has changed in the, you know, almost 20 years since I've been in high school, you know, this idea of program, you know, ministry, that's not working. Like, why do you think that young people are leaving the church or stepping away, or what do you think? Like, we threw around some ideas earlier, and
well, I mean, and there's a culture that young people. I work with high schoolers, so I'm used to saying young people, but young adults, those in their teenage years, often compare the church to the classroom. Yeah. Where that authenticity is missed, right. Where it's not about so much the relationship with Jesus Christ as it is fulfilling requirements. And so, and I think that's a topic that's very near and dear to my heart whenever it comes to sacramental prep. So the idea of moving confirmation to an earlier time is very interesting to me. But we got to think about it. And so, like, my background, what I'm pursuing right now, I'm getting my master's in psychology, where we're studying about the holistic person in their development through the eyes of vocation and flourishing. And one of the things that was kind of illuminated to me was this understanding of where they are holistically at that point in time, especially in the 8th grade, where it's at that point that they're starting to question, like they're starting to ask those very difficult questions, where they don't want to just sit down in a classroom and just learn all of this and just be like, all right, that's it. It's like they want to be able to ask those questions. And they feel like they don't have the opportunity to. And in the culture and kind of how they feed off of that's a turnoff. Like to be very, very, very frank with it. And I mean, but in Olivia, you can, and both of y'all being teachers, I mean, maybe y'all can confirm this, but even in the educational setting, if they don't have the opportunity to ask questions, but then have them authentically received, you know, that's like, okay, well, they don't care about me and my questions, so why should I care? Right.
Yeah, I think one of the worst things you can do as a teacher, as an adult in any child's life, is to say, don't ask that question. You know, like, why? You know, we were talking last week with Sarah Denny about theology of the body, and like, you know, young people shy away from that because adults shy away from that, you know, or they don't know the answer, or, you know, instead of saying that has been one of the greatest gifts as a teacher, is for me to be able to get comfortable with the idea of saying, I have no idea. Let's look at that. You know, or let me do some research on that, and being real with my students and saying, look, you know, because the worst thing you could do is just say, well, just because, because that's not enough to bite into and to hold on to. I think as anybody, especially a young person who's trying to find answers to questions they may have.
Well, and like I tell my students, and especially like my seniors that I teach a philosophy elective to, I'm like you have questions, and that's good. It means your brain is working. If you don't have questions, concerning. So like apply like the reasoning faculty, which makes you in the image of God. So first of all, give thanks for that. And second of all, what possibly would make you think that God doesn't want you to use that reasoning capacity to investigate him? Ask your questions, right? And even if those questions make you, you know, make someone scratch their head, like Kathleen was saying, or maybe if it's something that's like, you know, it's going to make someone uncomfortable, whatever, ask it anyway. Right. And it's important to me too, that like my students, they ask me questions, but they also learn how to do their own research, like responsibly and like from sources that are valid.
Right. Yeah.
But that's part of the process, right? And I think it's part of it. It's a two-way street, right? They need to feel comfortable, like, and it's like what you're saying. They need to feel like received as a person,
right? Because
no one's going to ask a question to someone that they don't feel like respects them,
right? Yeah.
Right. And so like they need to feel comfortable, but we also need to like if someone does ask a question, even if it's like off book, it's like I've been wondering this for 2 years. Yeah. We can't be like, well, we don't have time for that,
right?
Mm-hmm.
And like I've had to, in very rare occasions, be like, okay, we are like so behind right now.
Yeah.
I want you to write it down.
Yeah.
Put a timer on it. And in 2 days, do it right now.
Yeah.
In 2 days, you're going to remind me about it. Okay.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
And like, be intentional about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because they need to know that we're serious about helping them.
Right.
Even if it's like off book. Because like, Jesus doesn't follow a curriculum.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
He's not confined to the classroom walls.
No.
Right.
Yeah. And that gives them such a real like, yeah. I mean, we've been talking about that, the encounter, a real encounter with human beings that even though we may be somewhat experts in what we do, because it is, we might have a degree in it, that there are still things that we're like, oh, and I'd rather give you, like, it also shows them, I'd rather get you the right information than just spout something off.
Yeah.
Because that's the worst. I've had teachers like that where I'm like, okay, yeah, I smell what you're putting out there and it don't smell right.
But it also teaches them, especially in theology, this is so important. It also teaches them that there is a correct way to look at it.
Right.
And it's not just like what I think about it is enough.
Yes.
Or it's not a quick Google search.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they fall into that trap a lot. Like, well, I think it's this. And it's like, okay, well, you can have that opinion, but there are also authorities to consult and you might be wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, this is not the end, people. This is just the beginning. And what an awesome conversation. I love this. I'm so glad we got on this topic today. But you are listening to Catholic Underground, and we will be right back.
Hail, Holy Queen, Mother of Mercy, our life, our sweetness, and our hope. To thee do we cry, poor banished children of Eve. To thee do we send up our sighs, mourning and weeping in this valley of tears. Turn then, most gracious Advocate, thine eyes of mercy towards us, and after this our exile, show unto us the blessed fruit of thy womb, Jesus. O clement, O loving, O sweet Virgin Mary.
That's right. We've got some new jams.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
You are listening to the Catholic Underground. I am your host for the evening.
Yeah,
Kathleen. Joining me, Tyler, Olivia, Kevin, Jeff, Ed Balls in the ball pit, and you're here. Welcome. If this is your first time, buckle up, Buttercup. If you're a returning listener, we love you.
Buckle up anyway.
We've missed you. We're talking tonight about the nuns, especially when it comes to young adults in the young church. We've talked about this a lot. We, Father Chris, Olivia, and I, Tyler have some experience with youth ministry, young adult ministry. And it's an important topic because I think that, when we're looking at it, when we look at the church as a whole, we sometimes can get really dismayed in the way that it looks. There's a lot of people, especially with COVID, there's a lot of talk about what it's going to look like when we have to come back to church, and who's going to come back. But this story of the nuns and of the young adult church is not a COVID new story.
No.
Right.
It's been going on for a long time. And I think that there's been, a disconnect between when young people around the age of high school, and now we're finding out a little bit earlier, to the time when they want to come back and be married in the church or start a family, get their children baptized in the church. Where do they go, right? And the question that we might want to look at is why they go that way, right? And what can we do? I think this is what's most important. How do we get some kind of hope? Is to say, okay, here is the problem. Here is the illness. How do we fix that? Like if we went into the doctor's office and we said, no, my arm is not fallen off. It's fine, right? The doctor would be like, you're a big fat liar, right? So now we know, okay, we've gone to the doctor's office and we said, our arm is fallen off. The young adult church is not there, right? And if the doctor said, yes, I see this. I mean, that would I would ask for my money back and be like, okay, right? We go to the doctor to say, okay, well now how do we fix this, right? How do we reattach the arm? How do we bring these young people back into the church? Because I remember as a high school student, and I cannot tell you, I've been told a million times since then, right, that the church, the young people are not the church of tomorrow, that they are the church of right now.
Absolutely.
Right. And I feel like sometimes I thought, well, I had to be an old lady with a rosary and nothing else to do, but go sit in the church and pray for 6 hours a day until I can be, that's when I'll be active in the church, and that's not true. So how do we make young people, young adults, feel like they're part of the church, and not just feel, but like you are.
So.
Make it so. Make that a reality.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit before the show about, all the way back to, what all of those things that contribute to young people, walking away from the church, that might need to get a hard look at how do we improve that.
Yeah.
Well, I think part of it is like a mindset. So I was remembering, like with Tyler, a conference that we were at a few years ago, and this was when I worked at the diocese, and I was there with like the guy who worked with me and then Tyler, and we went to this like breakout session that was specifically on this topic, like the disaffiliation of young adults. And we walk in there and it's, blessedly so, it's full, and it's full of like older, maybe like 60s kind of crowd, people who work in their parishes and in their, different kind of capacities in schools and things, and older people. And we were the only young adults in the room.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just remember like the entire time there were opportunities where we were like try to engage and like ask questions and things, but the whole question of like the young adult question was treated as like a problem, but it was treated, to my mind at least, as like a problem that we can come at with the same mindset that we've come at with everything else, right? Programs and books and resources. And at maybe 15-20 minutes into it, Tyler and Joe and I looked at each other and we were like, do y'all just want to go to adoration?
Yeah.
Because essentially we weren't giving up on it, but essentially we were just like, we're kind of being talked at. We're definitely kind of being talked down to.
Right.
And we just want to go talk to Jesus. So, and I look at that now as like an analogy for like a lot of the movement, at least of like the young adults who stay within the church, like away from the programmatic, just back to basics. Like we just want to know what it is to pray.
Right. Yeah.
Like we want to strip down spirituality. Like just give us like meat and potatoes, please.
Yes.
And so I think that part of the answer, like what you're saying, is like part of the remedy is going to be like, we have to be willing to just rethink the way that we think, because the way that we've been thinking the past 20-30 years is very programmatic, right? And I'm not saying that programmatic is problematic in every instance, but we do tend to treat that as like a band-aid, right? Like, okay, well, we have this problem, here's a multi-step program that we can put in place that will fix these, have these objectives and fix these problems. Maybe not though. Maybe it won't.
And I love what you said, Olivia, about kind of like stripping it down a little bit, because this has kind of been the reality that I've been facing, is that because I'm very young in the intellectual formation of my faith. Like I've always been involved in my faith ever since I was in high school. And whenever I moved to college, I live about 2 hours away from here, and I went to school here in Baton Rouge, and I was the only one from my graduating class that came to school here, so I knew nobody, but was super involved in my faith. And the reason why I am still involved in my faith today is because there was one person who invited me to the Catholic Student Center on LSU's campus, for which I found my community that I was able to sustain my faith, if you will. But it was always it was more so that, like, it just stayed stagnant. I loved Jesus, and I loved going to Mass. And of course I had my ups and downs, but it all started by that personal touch and that relationship. And right now, like I said, I'm very young in the intellectual formation, which I think is very, very important and essential to growing in your faith. But with that said, our faith is so broad. Like, it's so complex, but so beautiful. Like, to me, that's why I love the faith so much, is because it is so complex. And my theory, I'm gonna call it a theory because that's actually what my capstone project is on for my master's, is faith sustainability through the age range that we're talking about. And there's a lot of talk about purpose, and there's a lot of talk about, in the aspect of vocation and having purpose for your life and seeing that you have purpose and that you're valued. And things like the virtues, like the Beatitudes, like ways that we live our lives, that is influenced by the sacraments and the Mass and everything. Like, just going down to the basics of what does it mean to be good? Because at the end of the day, as human beings, as we were created, we desire good. And if we're able to accompany these young people in knowing what that good is and why is it good, like, that's what they're desiring, right? Like, yes, it's important to learn about, canon law and like the why we do things and this, that, and the other. But at the root of it, it's about the relationship, and how do we get that relationship? And that is living by virtue, and looking at how God created you and why He created you, and you find that out through virtue and through charity and through service. Because that's another big thing, is service. Like, young people love service; they love it. And the other piece of it is that I'll mention. Is these young people are capable. Like, this is something that we have talked about before, is, so in my job with the Franciscan Experience, it's a theological summer institute. So we actually teach the young people who come for these 5 days theology. And it's amazing how much confidence they have, because they doubt themselves on being able to learn and understand and appreciate the faith. Which then holds us, the catechists and the ministers, accountable on making sure that we have that theological foundation in order to be able to teach that to these young people, which is such a beautiful journey. And it's not something that we as pastoral leaders should be intimidated by. If anything, it's a duty that we have to be able, because I can say this from personal experience, by my own soaking in of all of this knowledge, my own faith has strengthened, and my confidence has grown in the past couple of years. And so all of those things are kind of just a very bird's eye view of kind of my thoughts on that.
And I mean, and not to get like too saucy with this, but like, I love what you're saying about like, it's on you and the other people like who are specifically in charge of like teaching and forming your young people. Like, it's incumbent upon you to like educate yourselves and be confident yourselves so that you can teach them. And that's a big part of it. So
Absolutely.
I think a big part of the movement, the remedy going forward is like, we still have CCD, we still have PSR, whatever you call it, in your home parish or diocese. And we still have the need to educate the people who sit in our pews. And so it's on us as catechists, as priests, as whoever, to know the faith and to know, well, first of all, to know the person of Jesus.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
And to know
first
the faith.
And foremost.
And so I think that part of that, and this is where I might get a little saucy, is like, we have to be willing to look at ourselves and say, do I know the faith? And can I teach it? And be willing to say, maybe not. Maybe my gifts are best used somewhere else. Maybe so-and-so over here, I recognize that she is a great teacher for PSR, and I want to let her take over, and I want to go do this other thing, and still serve the church, right? Like you're saying, like we have hearts for service, and that's beautiful. It's very Christ-like, but looking at like sometimes maybe we get in our own way, right?
Absolutely.
Well, and young people today, all of us have access to more information than we've ever had.
Yes.
So it's no longer like, and you and I, we have all grown up with some awesome leaders in youth ministry and PSR and CCD, and those people are great. But I think, and I can speak to this as a teacher, as someone who teaches religion, even in some schools, that position is seen as, if you're a good person, you can teach religion.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, that's not like,
No.
oh no, like
Yes.
no. Yes. And I think that, that people can get into that position and I've seen some people get in that position and then work their tail off to educate themselves.
Yeah.
But our faith is not just love Jesus and it'll all be okay.
Right.
They're to an extent, but you have to be able to provide we talked about this a million times. We're a headline generation. They read the headline and then they go, I heard this. And if you have, there's only so much that you can say, let's learn that together. At some point, you've got to be able to say.
If you can't break it down in like 5 minutes.
Right. Yeah. They're gone. They're done. They're like, well, and then you lose credibility.
Yeah.
And so I think that, like you would, and this is a challenge to people who are in administrative positions. Like, you would never ask me to teach math because I don't have a math degree. I'm not saying that, necessarily everyone has to have a degree, but, religion teachers, in my humble opinion, religion, those who provide education in the faith should have some kind of training.
Should have a degree
or be working towards it, or, be in that realm, because it's that important, I think. Because otherwise it's just, it's just a very
because I would be willing to bet that some of the reasons why people leave the church is because they've been fed misinformation. Like it isn't the fullness of the truth that what the church offers.
Well, how many times do you encounter like, well, I had a teacher once who said this, and you have to very kindly, because you don't know who they're talking about. You have to very kindly
you don't know
say
how they interpreted it.
Exactly, because they might have misheard. There's so many times where people quote me back to me, and I'm like, I did not say that, because I know myself, and I did not say that.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Anyway. Oh my gosh, I could tell you about a game of telephone they played the other day. But so like you take everything with charity, but at the same time you having to correct just vast misinformation. And sometimes it is something that, they all kind of agree that they heard from the same teacher, and it's like, okay, well, the reality is that's not correct, but here's what is. And I agree with you that, theology is an academic discipline. And furthermore, Aristotle and Aquinas agreed that it's the highest of the sciences because it's the intellectual discipline, the ciencia, the type of wisdom that contemplates the things of God. So there is no higher. And like, that's something that you need education in.
Well, and I do want to offer hope here because a lot of something else that we talked about too is that we feel like a lot of young people just lack that confidence, and I kind of mentioned that earlier. But even in our catechist, right? Like if you're out there listening and you're a catechist and you feel like you can't consume the vast amount of knowledge, just start somewhere. Because I too suffer with that now. Like there's just so much. Like where do I even begin? Like just if anything, start with the Eucharist. Like if I were to give you one thing, start with the Eucharist. But also, I'm gonna follow the saucy line. But like, it takes a lot of humility, right? It takes a lot of humility. You kind of have to let your pride go to know, like, you're not going to know everything. And sometimes you're going to be challenged, and it's okay to say, I don't know. But the beauty of the church is that they have the things in possession to provide for you the answers. but seeking out your priests, seeking out those who may be more theologically trained than you are. Like, the sources are out there. We just have to make sure to kind of get our rear ends up to actually do the work to do it, because at the end of the day, it's going to fruitful all over.
Yeah. And none of this is to say that if you don't have a degree in theology, then you don't know. Like, none of that is to say.
Here I am. Yeah, absolutely.
I'll be the first one to admit, academically, my faith is not an academic faith. I struggle with it a lot, but I know the importance of my position. And I think too that the church maybe might, as we're looking at, what are we offering people, are we offering, adults opportunities to learn more about their faith? Or do you feel like as an adult that you should know what you don't know? You know what I mean? And so, if you we can look at the pandemic, but it's been happening before that. Many people, Catholic speakers, priests, bishops, the Pope himself, are on social media. And they're saying, I'm thinking of a priest that we have down in Houma Thibodeau here in Louisiana, who did a whole series on why do we do that? And start with that. Like, what are the questions that you have yourself? I know that, the other day I was speaking to some students about the creed, and I was like, did you ever realize that, where does Jesus go when he rises from the dead? And they're like, heaven. I'm like, nuh-uh.
Nope.
And they're like,
other way.
And you can see it. They were like, I'm like, yeah, don't you? You've heard it. You heard it. Where did it go? And they're like, he went to hell. And I'm like, okay, how many times have you heard that? Have you ever thought about that? And they're like, I'm like, no, we just gloss over that. And so in your everyday life as an adult Catholic, start taking note of what you don't know. Why do we genuflect? That's, and then there's 1,000,001 good resources out there. Now the trick is to find a good resource.
Yes.
Right. And we here at the Catholic Underground can give you all kinds of resources.
We can help you with
there.
that.
Yeah. But the important part now is to look at, at how we as adults, because this is another question I always have when people are like, oh, you're a young adult. I'm like, boo, I'm 34 years old. When do I get to just be an adult? Like, what is that? And so what I'm thinking, and let me hear your thoughts on this. When we're talking earlier about how we kind of section people off. You're a member of this part of the church, and you're a member of that part. You look at any kind of church's bulletin. They have all kinds of different ministries, which are great, right? But I wonder what a parish would look like if we just did away with all age specific ministries and just invited people to encounter the church. I remember when I was in New Orleans, we did a 33 Days to Morning Glory, and it wasn't advertised to anybody in general. Me and my friend Jamie, who's been on the show before, we were the youngest by probably 80 years. No lie. And it was, I was like, man, why isn't there nobody else here? Because it wasn't specific. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've done things like that before, when I had time, RIP. But I did the baking society, at church, to bake for, whatever, First Communion, things like that. And then the altar society, clean on a Saturday a month. And I want to get back into those things, but you show up to those things, and it is very clear that we have a good 40-50 year age gap, and we have to work sometimes for some conversation. Right. But at the same time, we also have a lot in common, because number one, we're both parishioners here. We both love Jesus. We can start there. But I think it's something where we kind of have to stop pretending that especially as like what you're saying, we need to be okay with shaving off the young part of young adults and just embrace the adult part and realize that not everything is going to be handcrafted for me. You're
not going to get a personal invitation with your name on it to every church event. And I think that we as a young adults as a whole have, like, we expect that. Oh, well, this must be catered to moi, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, boo, like you
no one invited me to go here.
This is the invite in the bulletin is to you.
Yeah.
Like the announcement at church is to you. It's not, you know, now everybody, you know, everybody who's not young adults, y'all don't listen because this isn't for y'all. I'm speaking to you. No, it's like I think that's the encouragement to young adults and young people is, I think that, you know, the older generations would die of shock if high schoolers just showed up, you know, to be a part of the altar society.
Yes.
They would, because that's how it should be.
Yeah.
You know, that's how it should be. And you know, we can talk about how young people don't have time and, you know, they're doing 1,000,001 other things. And some of that, you know, is fostered, you know, in the home and that kind of thing. But, you know, dude, just like be a part of the church. Your baptism and your confirmation are your invitation.
Yeah.
That you are initiated into the church. Come on.
Yeah.
Like,
And take initiative.
yeah. And young people, like that's it. Like be you know, stop being young adults, be adults and just be a part of the church. I think that would be.
Yeah.
And parishes make room.
Yeah.
Parish, I was literally about to go along that same route. Like parishes, like the adults, especially in the parishes, like welcome them, right? Like don't make it a culture shock. Welcome them in, because that is what the church is. Like that's what Jesus welcomes them to, is that's the relationship. And it's the people that make up the church that's so beautiful, that like we have the biggest impact on one another. And so yes, young adults take initiative, because that's the biggest thing that I see nowadays, especially in young people, is just this lack of initiative in what should be the most important thing for them. And especially,
there's no time to waste.
And there's no time to waste. And like we have many talks about with, like, especially with seniors as they're going off to college and talking about, you know, getting involved in your campus ministry and this, that, and the other. Y'all, I can guarantee you every single college campus has some sort of welcome where their campus ministry is there. Go up and talk to them like that. Like that's going to be your most authentic community that you're ever going to find. So finding that community to help you is going to be so important. Yeah.
At the same time too, like, don't move from one church to another and forget about your home, you know, your home church. I think a lot of times as adults, we send our young people off to college hoping they'll find a college ministry, you know, and then we hope that they find a young adult ministry, and we're like, why don't they just find a ministry in the church? You know what I mean? Young adults, you're out there. We love you. We miss you. We're coming to find you. But what you found is that part of the show that we like to call
the CU Pick of the Week.
Booyah! And to start off, we're going to go to our good friend Tyler. What you got for us this week?
So everyone likes a good game night, right?
I do.
Like, oh yeah, like
had
get
game night today with my
together.
mom.
Well, so I was very fortunate to gather amongst friends. This past Friday, we were celebrating the end of the school year, and we had ourselves a little game night. And this particular game may have been out for a while, but I just, I think I knew about it, but I just played it for the first time, and that is the Catholic card game.
Oh yes, very cool.
So you can compare it to like Apples to Apples or another card game of similar that I will not name on the show.
Yes, good.
And so it's basically like you have a prompt card, and then you have 7 cards in your hands. You kind of match it, and it can be funny, it can be serious, whatever. So I have a good friend of mine who is a national speaker, and she mentioned the Catholic card game on the talk, and she said it's like that other card game, but for people who still want to go to heaven. Check it out. It's a yellow box Catholic card game.
Yes, indeed. I know many a young adult have enjoyed this game. It is good.
And there's expansion packs,
Expansion
catching
packs.
foxes. There's is
Oh
really
yeah, they
funny.
have like little bits to catching foxes, pints with Aquinas, all of that.
Those are
Excellent.
good.
Very good. Thank you. All right, Olivia, you're up next.
My pick of the week is an EP by Mumford & Sons called Johannesburg.
Yep.
Which came out in 2016, but just for some reason never was on my radar.
All right.
But basically, when they did a tour through South Africa, they recorded this EP. I think it's like 5 songs with let's see. It's a South African pop trio called Beatenberg, but specifically featuring a Singhalese singer, Baba Mal. And let me tell you, my friend Haley sent me one of their songs yesterday, and I've listened to the whole EP like 15 times since then. It is so good.
Yeah.
Like it's still Mumford, so like the folk kind of neo folk style, but like the mix of styles with like this very South African, like the drums and things like that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It is so good. So I like try, let's see, There Will Be Time. It's the first track on the EP. Like listen to that one, let it wash over you and like change your perspective on what music should be. And then listen to it again and then go the whole way through the EP and yeah, let us know what you think. Back chat.
Challenge. Okay.
Love it. I'm going to stick with the music theme. My favorite band, which, oh my gosh, I love them so much. Need to Breathe. Like this has been the hardest thing of like the pandemic. I could sit in my little, hobbit hole for years, but I've not been able to go see Need to Breathe in concert. And they have just announced that in the fall, they've just released also a single called Into the Mystery. And then they had this whole like mysterious, like they wouldn't tell anybody what it was all about. And like everybody's like, what's going on? What are they doing? They spent like 9 months. They give themselves like a couple of months. I don't know how many. But they gave themselves a couple of months. They locked themselves after they were tested for COVID. They locked themselves in a house and recorded an album. And now they're going on tour with Switchfoot. Now, if you're a young adult, you know Switchfoot, okay?
Wow.
So in the fall, they will be launching a tour. Tickets go on sale tomorrow to insiders, if you are one. Me. That would be me. And so if anybody wants to go, they're going to be all over the place. It's going to be awesome. I'm super excited to see music starting to come back.
Yes.
Like these, I'm not a huge concert goer. I don't just go to concerts for funsies. There are specific people that I will travel around the world to see. Need to Breathe. Garth Brooks, here's looking at you. I'll go anywhere.
Same.
But that's what I'm super excited to see that come about. And, and the music that is going to come out of this this last year and people being holed up and really having to think about life, stoked. So Need to Breathe, Into the Mystery, there it is. Jeff, we did it.
We did it.
We did it.
Yes.
We couldn't do it with people, without people like our listeners.
Yeah, that's true. And as always, the Catholic Underground is made possible by viewers, listeners, prayer warriors, and benefactors just like you. So become an official Undergrounder today by going to CatholicUnderground.com/donate. You can also help us out by letting others know about us. Remember to like us, heart us, star us on your platform of choice. And if you have the opportunity to leave a review, we appreciate your kind words.
Yes, indeed. Our panelists this week have been Olivia Gulino at the.real.omg on Instagram and Twitter. Thanks, Olivia.
Thank you.
We have also had Tyler Trahan. And Tyler, what is your handle?
At Tyler J. Trahan.
Oh.
Trahan.
Very good. Excellent. Good to be with you.
It's always good to be here. Such a joy.
Yes, indeed. As well as, I'm Jeff Blackwell, our technical director at Jeff Blackwellis on all the things. You're so good.
It's a privilege. Thank you.
We've also had Ed Ball as our video director. He's just in the ball pit. Jim Hayes, our research assistant with his crew in the lab. And you know me, I'm not Father Chris. I'm Kathleen Lee. I am found at KLee626 on Instagram. I think you'll find us there. You've been listening to the Catholic Underground, cutting through the noise so you can find that still small voice. And we'll see you next time.
From the Catholic Underground.